June 1914. Europe was in the midst of an idyllic summer. The nations of Europe, fierce rivals in the competition for colonies around the world and for the prerogatives of imperial power, were also joined together by webs of trade and capital. Their royal houses linked by bonds of family and marriage. Global trade was at an all-time high. The economic interdependence that a century later we would call globalization was an undisputed fact of life. The prospect of an all-out European war was unthinkable, the pundits said. Laughable, said the politicians. Nothing could happen that couldn't be resolved by the diplomats at some stylish European resort. No one saw the catastrophe coming. No one thought such a catastrophe was possible. Until it came. The Great War. The war to end all wars. The war of Western civilization. The European war that would grow to encompass virtually the entire world and ultimately force 90% of the world's population to choose sides, would prove to be a cataclysm beyond anything that anyone had imagined. By the time it had ended, over 16 million people had lost their lives. A total of 70 million men took up arms. 9 million never returned. Another 36 million were wounded. The war left in its wake unparalleled devastation. The economic cost of fighting it was estimated at the time at $186 billion. The damage it left in its wake was estimated at another $151 billion. The total of $337 billion in modern 21st century dollars represents a sum of between $17 trillion and $35 trillion, an amount so staggering as to be virtually incomprehensible. The war would shatter the peace of Europe for the better part of a century. It would give rise to another, even more devastating war in less than a generation, lead to a Cold War that would divide the continent of Europe for almost 50 years, and on more than one occasion, bring the world to the brink of nuclear annihilation. He was a boy, 18 years old, a poor student. He was thin, sickly, and suffered from tuberculosis. Gavrilo Princip was an unlikely candidate to start a world war that would bring down 4 royal houses and their empires and leave millions of dead in its wake. But that is exactly what he did. On June 28, 1914, the heir to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, paid an official visit to Sarajevo. They were there to inspect the Austrian troops garrisoned there. His trip had been announced in the local papers weeks before. His route was common knowledge. He and his entourage traveled in open-top vehicles. There was no security, no protection, no precautions were taken. A secret Bosnian society, committed to forcing the union of Bosnia's Serbs with the Kingdom of Serbia named Unification or Death, decided to use the opportunity of the Archduke's visit to strike a blow for Serbian unification. Operating under the moniker the Black Hand, and secretly funded and supplied by elements within the Serbian government, they recruited a half-dozen young men, supplied them with pistols and bombs, and gave them an afternoon's worth of rudimentary training. Gavrilo Princip was one of their recruits. Late on the afternoon of June 28th, Gavrilo Princip found himself standing a few feet away from the open-topped car that the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife were traveling in. Pulling out his pistol, barely at a distance of 5 feet, he fired 2 shots, mortally wounding the Archduke and his wife. The fuse of war had been lit. As Austrian troops in Bosnia carried out reprisal for the murder of the Archduke, the Austrian-Hungarian government in Vienna delivered to Serbia a 10-point ultimatum. The demands would have given the Austrian government carte blanche to intervene in Serbian domestic affairs at will. The language was purposely designed to be so insulting and provocative that the Serbian government would have no choice but to reject the demands out of hand. In the words of Sir Edward Grey, the British Foreign Secretary, it was the most formidable document ever sent from one nation to another. The Serbian government immediately accepted 8 of the points. They asked for additional time to consider the remaining 2 and proposed that the International Tribunal in The Hague arbitrate the last remaining points. As a precaution, the Serbian government ordered the full mobilization of the Serbian army. Vienna refused to accept any further delay. Citing the Serbian unwillingness to immediately accept all 10 of the Austrian demands, on July 28th, barely a month after the assassination of the Archduke, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire declared war on Serbia and ordered a partial mobilization of its army. The Cataclysm had begun. Russia, under its Tsar Nicholas II, styling itself the protector of the Slavic peoples, of which the Serbs were part, declared that it would come to the aid of Serbia if Austria invaded it. Urged on by his generals, Nicholas ordered a partial mobilization of the Russian army. Faced with German threats to stand down or face war with Germany as well, on July 30th, Nicholas II ordered a full mobilization of Russian forces along the 1,000-mile common border with Austria-Hungary and Germany. On August 1st, citing the ongoing Russian mobilization, Germany declared war on Russia. Simultaneously, Berlin issued an ultimatum to the French government: pledge to remain neutral or face war with Germany as well. On August 3rd, in the absence of any response from the French government, Germany declared war against France as well. Simultaneously, Germany demanded that Belgium allow the free transit of German troops across its soil, or it would be treated as an enemy. Less than 24 hours later, advanced elements of the German army crossed the Belgian frontier. At the stroke of midnight, in the absence of a German guarantee to respect Belgian neutrality, Great Britain declared war on Germany and began the mobilization of its army and navy. It had been 35 days since Gavrilo Princip, an 18-year-old boy, had pulled the trigger that had killed the Archduke Ferdinand and his wife. It was only 14 days since Austria-Hungary had issued its ultimatum to Serbia. All over Europe, war fever was raging. Each new declaration of war triggered new spontaneous celebrations of support across Europe's capitals. Across Europe, millions of soldiers were taking positions along their frontiers. The unthinkable had happened. The Cataclysm had begun. By the first week of August, Europe was in the grips of an all-out mobilization. Millions of men were on the march. On August 4th, in accordance with the master plan outlined by the chief of the German General Staff in 1905, Count Alfred Graf von Schlieffen, 75 German divisions assembled across the French-Belgian border. 55 of those divisions intended to sweep across Belgium, then pivot at the English Channel and descend into France in a drive toward Paris. The remaining 20 divisions took up positions along the Burgundian Gap, along the borders of Alsace. The Schlieffen Plan envisioned that the French army would be trapped in a giant pincer movement between the right wing of the German army and the center and left wings. Once trapped, the hammer of the right wing would descend against the anvil of the left and center wings and annihilate the French army. The Schlieffen Plan envisioned that the French army would be destroyed and France forced to surrender within 6 weeks. With France vanquished, Germany would turn its military power to the Eastern Front and deal with Russia. Over 90% of German military strength was earmarked for the initial attack in the West. It did not go as planned. Invading Belgium, German forces were quickly stopped by the defensive fortifications built around the city of Liège. The city lay squarely in the path of the advancing German army. Heavy artillery, including 2 mighty Krupp-built 420mm siege howitzers,